There are encounters that seem to mark the soul, moments when, upon meeting someone's gaze, we feel a strange familiarity, as if that person has always been there, waiting. When we find someone who resonates with our deepest essence, the world seems to pause for an instant. But is this merely chemistry, chance, or is there something far more ancient and symbolic behind these bonds? Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers us a profound insight into the mystery of spiritual connections. If you have already met your soulmate, subtle but unmistakable signs begin to appear in your life. These clues are not coincidences, but manifestations of a deep psychic process that reveals much about your inner journey and the path of individuation. Have you ever felt this? Leave a comment. I recognize the signs of my soulmate. In Jungian analytical psychology, the idea of a soulmate does not appear as an idealized romantic figure, but as a symbolic expression of the quest for wholeness. According to Jung, the unconscious projects repressed or unknown aspects of ourselves onto other people, especially in intense romantic relationships. This is the phenomenon of projection. We see in the other what we have not yet recognized in ourselves. When we meet someone we feel is our soulmate, we are often witnessing a projection of our anima, the unconscious feminine aspect in a man, or our animus, the unconscious masculine aspect in a woman. This deep connection attracts us because it touches the hidden parts of our psyche, inviting us to integrate these internal opposites. Jung called this process individuation, the journey by which we become who we truly are. Moreover, the encounter with a soulmate often triggers a confrontation with the shadow, all that we deny or reject in ourselves. No matter how harmonious the relationship seems, it inevitably leads us to face pains, insecurities, and blockages. Yet it is precisely this confrontation that makes healing and spiritual growth possible. Thus, the spiritual signs that continue to appear after meeting a soulmate are not mere coincidences. They are the unconscious attempting to communicate that something greater is at work. The true meeting of souls is a symbolic journey of inner reconciliation, of integrating opposites, and of awakening consciousness. Many believe that recognizing a soulmate is a spontaneous, magical experience, as if something in the other awakens an ancient memory of the soul. However, for Jungian analytical psychology, this immediate recognition may be rooted in unconscious mechanisms, especially projection. When we project, we are not merely seeing the other, we are seeing parts of ourselves that we have not yet understood, integrated, or accepted. Projection is a natural mechanism of the psyche. It occurs when unconscious contents, especially emotional complexes and archetypes, are cast outward and attributed to other people. In romantic relationships, this becomes particularly intense, as the unconscious sees in the partner a mirror of itself, someone who seems to complete what we lack. That is why meeting a so-called soulmate often feels inevitable, overwhelming, and full of meaning, even if there is little real knowledge about the other. For Jung, this experience is deeply tied to encountering the anima or animus, archetypal images of our inner femininity and masculinity. When we meet someone who unconsciously corresponds to the image we have constructed of these archetypes, a powerful attraction is awakened. The person seems familiar, as if we have found a lost piece of ourselves, but in reality, we are seeing our own internal image projected onto them. This enchantment can be sublime, but also dangerous. The idealization that accompanies projection tends to mask reality. We see the other not as they are, but as our unconscious wishes them to be. We create unrealistic expectations and are often disappointed when the other's true self emerges, revealing imperfections and differences. It is at this point that many relationships that seemed destined come into crisis, and this is not a mistake, but part of the process. Projection has an important psychic function. It helps us make visible what we have not yet been able to recognize within ourselves. By projecting, we have the chance to observe, outside of ourselves, aspects that need to be retrieved and integrated into consciousness. In the context of a soulmate, this function intensifies as the relationship becomes a kind of symbolic stage where internal dramas are enacted. It is common, for example, for a person to see in the other exactly what they lack, a sensitive and loving presence they never allowed themselves to be, or a strong and decisive character that they themselves repressed. In this sense, a soulmate is not merely someone we love, it is someone who deeply activates our inner gaps, challenging us to look within. The real challenge lies in recognizing that projection is only the first step. If the bond is authentic and there is emotional maturity, the relationship can evolve beyond projection. It is at this moment that the soulmate ceases to be an unconscious fantasy and becomes a real partner, with whom we build not a romantic ideal, but a shared journey of growth. Undoing projection does not mean losing the enchantment of the connection, but rather allowing it to become more genuine. When we stop demanding that the other be our psychic salvation, we create space for a more conscious relationship, in which love is sustained not by illusion, but by the mutual choice to evolve together. In this process, the encounter with a soulmate takes on a new meaning. They are no longer just the lost half, but someone who reflected the deepest parts of us and who, for that very reason, helped us see who we truly are. Every deep relationship, especially one that awakens the feeling of a soul bond, inevitably confronts us with our own shadow. Jung understood the shadow as the unconscious part of the psyche that contains everything we reject, repress, or have not yet been able to integrate into ourselves. In other words, these are aspects of our personality that, because they do not fit our conscious identity, are hidden, but they do not disappear. They remain alive in the unconscious, waiting for opportunities to emerge. Spiritually intense relationships act as a mirror that reflects with clarity both our light and our shadows. When we meet someone with whom we feel a profound connection, that person not only activates feelings of love and completeness, but also awakens fears, insecurities, unresolved traumas, and internal conflicts. In this sense, the soulmate functions as a catalyst for transformation, provoking what Jung would call a confrontation with the shadow. This confrontation is rarely comfortable. As the relationship deepens, the initial enchantment gives way to negative projections. The other, who once seemed perfect, begins to exhibit behaviors that irritate or wound us, not necessarily because they are destructive in themselves, but because they touch unhealed wounds within us. It is at this point that many mistake the ordeal for a sign that the relationship has lost its meaning. Yet in truth, this is when it begins to reveal its true transformative value. The shadow appears in the form of jealousy, control, fear of abandonment, excessive criticism, emotional dependence, among other manifestations. These expressions are not mere personality flaws. They are symptoms of psychic contents that have not yet been brought to consciousness. The partner functions as a bearer of these contents, projecting back onto us the parts we cannot see alone. This process is inevitable and essential, for without confronting the shadow, there is no real growth. In a spiritually significant relationship, the presence of the shadow should not be seen as a sign that something is wrong, but as a valuable opportunity for self-knowledge. It takes courage to look at what disturbs us in the other and ask, why does this affect me so much? What is in me that I have not yet accepted? Often we discover that the faults we see in the other are in fact expressions of our own unresolved pains. Jung also stated that the more we ignore the shadow, the more it governs our lives. That is why intense relationships can become fertile ground for destructive behaviors if there is no awareness of what is being activated. Anger, resentment, and denial can dominate the bond and turn a relationship with evolutionary potential into a source of suffering. However, when both parties are willing to face these shadows, the relationship can become a path of mutual healing. It is important to understand that the shadow is not purely negative. It also carries forgotten potentials, repressed talents, and aspects of the self that need to be recovered. In a soulmate relationship, the partner can help us reclaim these lost parts, but this only happens when we are willing to recognize the shadow as an integral part of the individuation process. True love is not blind, as the saying goes. It sees clearly. To see the other's shadow and still remain, choosing to love and grow together, is one of the greatest acts of spiritual maturity. When this happens, the bond between souls deepens, not because there are no conflicts, but because both are capable of traversing shadows and finding, at the heart of darkness, the light of consciousness. When two people connected on a deep level meet, the reality around them seems to conspire in their favor. Unlikely events occur. Coincidences laden with meaning repeat themselves. Vivid dreams emerge as coded messages, and an inexplicable sense of recognition fills the air. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, the simultaneous occurrence of two events, linked not by causality, but by meaning. In spiritually charged relationships, synchronicities become almost inevitable, as if the collective unconscious actively participates in that reunion. Synchronicity is not just a psychological curiosity. For Jung, it is a principle that reveals the connection between the inner world and the outer world. When someone finds a soulmate with whom they share a profound archetypal bond, the symbolic field activates and reality molds itself like a mirror of the soul. These signs do not appear to impress, but to guide. They indicate that there is something beyond the visible operating in the web of life, something that connects two paths with purpose and depth. These signs can manifest in various ways: recurring names, songs that play at specific moments, seemingly random encounters that reveal hidden messages, intense déjà vu experiences, or even dreams that announce or confirm the bond with the other person. Such manifestations are archetypes in action, primordial images that emerge from the collective unconscious and take recognizable forms to guide the transformative process that begins. Jung believed that certain archetypes activate at decisive moments in life. The archetype of the self, for example, may manifest to unite two souls who share a common mission of psychic development. The encounter with a soulmate can be precisely one of those activations, a symbolic call for both to come into contact with their true purpose, not only individually, but collectively. And the signs that appear along the way are expressions of this summons. Another archetype frequently activated in soul connections is that of the eternal feminine, or the eternal masculine. When a woman, for instance, meets a man who unconsciously embodies her idealized animus, or when a man sees in a woman his projected anima, the archetypal energy intensifies. This encounter creates a symbolic field in which everything seems fated and highly significant. And within this symbolic field, synchronicities bloom. It is important to remember that these signs should not be interpreted literally or superstitiously. They are not guarantees that the relationship will be permanent or free of difficulties. On the contrary, these encounters often come to provoke structural upheavals in the psyche because it is through imbalance that we grow. What matters is what these signs awaken internally. They function as invitations to inner listening, to contemplating what is emerging from the soul at that moment. Dreams in this context take on a fundamental role. Dreaming of the person before meeting them, having recurring images that point to the relationship, or perceiving symbols that signal the bond are manifestations of the unconscious, trying to prepare consciousness for the encounter. Jung believed that dreams serve a compensatory function. They show the psyche what consciousness does not yet see. Thus, dreams about a soulmate can reveal both the potential of the encounter and the shadows it will bring forth. To recognize these signs, one must develop symbolic sensitivity, the ability to read life as a living book, full of hidden messages. This reading requires no haste but presence. The spiritual bond between two people does not reveal itself in a single day, but in a series of internal and external movements that together build a rich narrative of meaning. And each synchronicity is like a comma in that story, a pause confirming that we are on the right path. Spiritual life moves through symbols, and when a soul encounter happens, symbols become more vivid, more intense, more immediate. They are not merely signs to be collected or admired, but portals to a deeper awareness of existence. They say silently, something greater is happening here. Listen, observe, feel, and allow yourself to walk more truthfully toward yourself. From the Jungian perspective, the deepest purpose of existence is not to find happiness in a superficial sense, but to realize inner wholeness, a process Jung called individuation. This is the path by which the human being integrates opposites within themselves, acknowledging and embracing both light and shadow, both conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Along this journey, significant relationships, especially those marked by a soul bond, play a crucial role. In this symbolic context, a soulmate is not simply someone who completes us, but someone who awakens in us the need for self-knowledge. They are a presence that activates deep layers of the psyche, and in doing so, forces us to abandon illusions, confront fears, and develop a broader awareness of who we truly are. This person can arrive as a guide, a mirror, a challenge, or an enigma, but never as mere superficial company. The process of individuation is, by nature, solitary. It is an inner journey that cannot be undertaken by anyone but ourselves, yet there are encounters that catalyze this movement, and a soulmate bond is one of them. This symbolic figure provokes such intense internal recognition that the psyche is driven to reorganize itself. We instinctively feel that something essential is at stake, and more often than not, it is. This reorganization is not always comfortable. It involves crises, identity ruptures, profound questioning, and the deconstruction of old patterns. A soulmate confronts us with what lies dormant within us, our forgotten potentials, our unresolved traumas, our most authentic desires. And by facing this person not as idealizations but as conscious mirrors, we make room for real transformation. Throughout the individuation process, it is necessary to integrate opposites, reason and emotion, masculine and feminine, action and receptivity, shadow and persona. A soulmate often symbolically embodies the aspects we have not yet recognized or developed in ourselves. If we are rational people, they may awaken our sensitivity. If we are controllers, they may teach us surrender. If we fear pain, they may teach us how to endure it. In this dynamic, we move from living in fragmentation to walking toward a more whole identity. It is important to stress that a soulmate is not necessarily someone we will spend our entire lives with. Sometimes they appear for a brief period, enough to activate profound changes and realign us with our own destiny. Their function is not simply to stay by our side, but to awaken us. And this awakening can be painful, for it often demands letting go of illusions and rebuilding the self. In some cases, the meeting with a soulmate coincides with major life transitions, career changes, existential crises, significant losses. This happens because the psyche is more vulnerable, more open to the unconscious, and the call of the self, the regulating center of the psyche, becomes more audible. The presence of a soulmate at such a time is not accidental. They emerge as a living archetype, a symbol of what needs to be integrated or transformed. They evoke our inner vocation. True love, when viewed through the lens of individuation, is neither possessive nor idealized. It is liberating. It does not seek to mold the other, but accepts them as they are. And by doing so, it teaches us to see ourselves more clearly. A soulmate summons us to take responsibility for our own growth. They do not solve our conflicts, but compel us to face them. They do not fill our emptiness, but show us where we still need to build. When we understand that this bond is a symbolic invitation to wholeness, we stop expecting it to be always easy or harmonious. We begin to honor its depth, even in difficult moments, recognizing that every tension, every silence, every reunion serves an archetypal function in the soul's maturation process, and in that recognition, love becomes sacred. By integrating what a soulmate awakens in us, we draw closer to the self. And that is the true alchemy of individuation, transforming a human encounter into an experience of transcendence. A soulmate, then, is not the final destination, but the key that opens the door to what we have always sought within ourselves. Encounters that truly transform do not happen by chance. When we meet someone who awakens in us a recognition so profound that it seems to transcend time and space, we are facing something beyond romance. We are being called to grow. A soulmate, in Carl Jung's analytical psychology, is not a promise of happy endings, but a portal to self-knowledge, to the integration of fragmented parts of the psyche, and to the awakening of a more conscious love. Projection, shadow, synchronicity, and individuation are not mere theoretical concepts. They are living forces that shape how we relate, how we love, and how we become whole. Identifying the spiritual signs that accompany this kind of encounter is to acknowledge that the unconscious is calling us to a symbolic journey of return to our true selves. If you felt this content resonate with your own story, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Here we dive deep into themes that unite spirituality and psychology with meaning and truth. And be sure to watch the video on the screen now. It may be the next step in your journey of inner transformation.